Hello there. A few weeks ago, I made a video talking about what drinks you should order if you go into a coffee shop but you don't like coffee. Today, I am coming for the rest of you all. Most cafes share a very similar foundation of coffee drinks that they all build off of, and today we're going to talk about those foundational drinks, what they are, and how to order them. We have a lot to cover today. I am looking very nervously to the side at quite a few glasses that are going to be filled with coffee very shortly, so without wasting any more time, let's get started on our foundational coffee drinks. Now, first and foremost, the primary component of a coffee shop menu is going to be, jazz hands, coffee. However, I'm going to call this section of the menu simply filter coffee, because within cafes, there are generally two primary ways that you'll experience coffee. You'll either experience it as drip coffee, or you'll experience it as a pour over. Both of these methods of preparation result in a somewhat similar end result, be it a liquid that looks like this. However, they're at different scale, and you'll tend to have a slightly different drinking experience based on which one you get. Drip coffee is a very, very iconic, just like part of American coffee culture. We want coffee, we want it hot, and we want it brewed at a large scale. Drip coffee is generally brewed in quantities of a liter up to 4 or 5 or potentially even more liters. The idea is that it is quick for you to order, it is consistent, and it's pretty tasty as well. However, you also have the side of pour overs, which again, it's still coffee, but in terms of preparation, it's kind of the exact opposite. Pour overs are generally going to be hand brews that a barista makes individually for you. This allows for a lot more versatility of the coffee used, so instead of just having a blend or just like one coffee that they serve all day long in these large batches, with pour overs, you're able to more tailor specific special coffees to the customer. Pour overs will take longer to receive, and you won't generally see them as often as you see drip coffee. Drip coffee is kind of the standard, at least in America. Pour overs are like the fun add-on. Some cafes will do both, some will do one or the other. Both are coffee, both are very tasty. However, let's say you want to make your drip coffee just a little bit more interesting. There's a way to do this very easily, and it is called the café au lait. Pardon me while I go get our first pitcher of many pitchers of milk today. It's very common to see people going to the condiment station at a coffee shop and putting sugar or cold cream into their drink to sweeten it and to add a little bit more mouthfeel to it. However, if you want something that tastes a little bit more naturally sweet without that added sugar, something that has a little bit more texture and mouthfeel without going all the way over to a latte, the café au lait might be for you. The café au lait is simply about 2 parts coffee to 1 part steamed milk. The steamed milk adds a lot of texture to the drink. It adds a lot of just kind of perceived sweetness from the warmth of the milk, and additionally, it's often a bit more affordable than a latte. We move on to the largest section of our foundational coffee menu, and that's going to be espresso. So let me go pull some espresso. We'll be right back. I want to give a huge thank you to Trade Coffee for sponsoring today's video. If you're like me and starting to get nervous that the holiday shipping deadlines are quickly approaching and disappearing before you get your shopping done, then Trade has the solution for you. This season, give your loved ones, or you frankly, the gift of better coffee. Trade is a coffee subscription service that makes it easy to explore new coffees from the comfort of your own home. Trade partners with the nation's top-rated independent roasters to send you the best quality coffee you can get, and whether you know what you like or are new to specialty coffee, Trade has you covered. Gifting a Trade subscription is a great way to give a thoughtful gift without actually having to put too much thought into it. It's a gift that can be delivered straight to their inbox, and all you have to decide is how many bags of coffee they'll receive. With over 450 unique coffees to choose from, they'll be sure to find all sorts of delicious options to fit their needs. So if you're ready to get started and gift a digital Trade subscription this year, head down to the link in the description to get a free bag of coffee with any subscription purchase. That's drinktrade.com/MDC for a free bag of coffee with any subscription purchase. Welcome back. Let's dive into some espresso. Espresso is one of the most common ways that people consume coffee all over the world, and it is arguably even more of a foundational component to coffee shop menus than even just coffee is on its own. You could, of course, order and drink an espresso on its own, and it would come in something like this, usually about 2 ounces for a double shot, and you would likely get a little spoon on the side that you stir to incorporate your crema with the body of the shot. Espresso is a very small drink, but it's also very, very concentrated in flavor and also in caffeine. There is often a misconception that espresso naturally just has more caffeine than like a drip coffee, simply because it has a stronger flavor to it than drip coffee. However, that's not necessarily true. First of all, it very much depends on roast level and a whole bunch of factors, but as a pretty close one-to-one comparison, a double shot of espresso is usually roughly equivalent to like an 8-ounce cup of coffee. It's quick, it's punchy, some people love it, some people like to add a little bit of milk to it. And here we go. We're gonna add some milk in many different proportions to this espresso. Moving up in size, let's start this milk and espresso section by simply starting at the smallest and moving up in size. So, moving up one step from an espresso, you have the macchiato, at least the traditional espresso macchiato. This drink, in its most base form, is an espresso with a dollop of milk foam. Let's make it. Wow, that was easy. This is generally about a 3-ounce drink, so 2 ounces of espresso and about 1 ounce of milk in total, be it steamed milk or foam or however you want to define that. This is also where we start to get into a little bit of the tricky territory of traditional versus modern definitions of these Italian coffee drinks. Now what I just added was arguably mostly steamed milk. A lot of people wouldn't call that foam. However, some people prefer the more traditional method of making a macchiato, which, and I'm not even talking caramel macchiato versus espresso macchiato here, I'm talking some people prefer to simply scoop off the airy, light, foamy part of the milk and just kind of dollop that right on top. Both of these definitions, both simply adding steamed milk and also a dollop of foam, are great definitions for the macchiato, and it really depends on what cafe you're going into as to which one you will receive. It's tasty, it's again punchy because it's still a lot of espresso in comparison to the ratio of milk, but let's say you want to add just a little bit more milk. Let's move up to our next drink. Moving up a singular ounce in size, we now have the cortado, which in my experience is the most commonly asked about drink on any singular coffee menu. I can't even count how many times I've been asked what a cortado is, and this is the way I like to explain it at its most base level. A cortado is a 1-to-1 ratio of espresso to milk. So in here we have a double shot of espresso, which is about 2 ounces. And I have some steamed milk right here. It's not a super stiff milk, it's kind of akin to what you would steam for a latte. That was a pretty good monk's head, if I do say so myself. 2 ounces of espresso, 2 ounces of milk. Easy, delicious, classic. This drink is of course more milk forward than the macchiato is, as it has that additional ounce of milk. However, you can also still taste a good amount of the espresso. I find this to be a very nice balance if you are someone who enjoys the flavor of straight espresso, but it wants it softened just a little bit. I think this is very much a classic barista and kind of industry drink that we've all adopted. It's delicious and you should try it if you haven't. However, if we move up a size from this, we come to probably the most controversial drink on this entire video, and also one of the most popular. We have arrived at the cappuccino. Now, let me go steam up some milk. Now, in order to attempt to do this drink justice, I'm gonna make it first, and then we're gonna talk about it calmly and peacefully. Now the cappuccino has gone through many different iterations, and it nowadays has kind of 3 distinct categories that it falls into. There is the traditional / dry category, there is the modern and wet category, for lack of a better word, and then there is also the miscellaneous cocoa category. So what I have made here is a pretty modern wet cappuccino. Now for all of these sizes, the cappuccino is usually about 5.5 to 6 ounces, depending on what brand cup you're using. And when you hear the cappuccino described, you usually hear it described as kind of a rule of thirds. You have 1 part espresso, 1 part steamed milk, and then 1 part foam. Be it a 6-ounce drink, that is 2 ounces of each of those categories. However, it's kind of hard to measure 2 2 ounces of foam. And the cappuccino has kind of evolved in texture into kind of the same thing as a latte, just in a smaller cup. You can see, because I've poured this in a glass cup, that there is a pretty distinct layer of lighter colored foam on the top here. And then you have your more homogeneous steamed milk and espresso beneath it. Again, some of you might be looking at this and saying that is not a cappuccino, and you know what? Fair enough. By definition of a traditional cappuccino, this isn't necessarily that. This is going to be a little bit unglamorous, but if I was making a traditional cappuccino, I might even scoop into the pitcher and start layering on that top layer of foam onto my drink. They're two different definitions, both equally valid, but it helps when you start ordering cappuccinos at coffee shops to specify whether you want a dry or wet cappuccino to ensure you get what you want rather than what the shop defaults to. A good rule of thumb that is generally true, but of course not always, is that more modern specialty shops tend to lean towards the wet cappuccino, and more traditional second wave or more like kind of just cafes will opt towards a more traditional version. And then you have the Australians, and they're not alone in this. I see this most commonly in Australia, but in Australia, you will frequently see cocoa powder placed on top of a cappuccino. Sometimes even cinnamon, but most commonly cocoa powder. Generally, it's unsweetened. Sometimes it gets mixed into the drink while the drink has been poured, and sometimes it just gets powdered on top. This adds an additional layer of kind of like cocoa bitterness to the entire drink. It mellows out the sweetness from that added milk, and in general, coffee and chocolate complement each other very well, so all in all, very tasty drink. You won't see cocoa powder on top of cappuccinos all that often, especially in America. However, you will see it occasionally. It's just a different version of the cappuccino. So I thought I should make you aware of it. And I said this was the most controversial drink in the bunch, but the next one might be even slightly more controversial, at least slightly more confusing. So let's move on to the flat white. Once again, I'm gonna make it first and then we're gonna talk about it. To talk about this drink, we once more have to return to Australia and New Zealand. This is a beverage that, while you do see it around the US, and I would say it's gaining popularity, you definitely don't see it nearly as much as you do in Australian coffee culture. There are many long-running debates about this drink. I think the most popular version that people were often introduced to actually came from Starbucks, which was essentially a very large latte with a singular dot of white foam on top. The flat white in general tends to be about 6.5 to 7 ounces, which puts it very close to that cappuccino we just looked at. However, unlike the more traditional version of the cappuccino, the flat white has a much thinner milk texture. It's less aerated and it's a good deal less foamy. You can see on the side of the cup here that we do have a pretty well-formed layer of foam on the top here, but it is nowhere near a third of the overall drink. This is much more akin to the kind of milk texture you would find in a latte. Additionally, the flat white doesn't come with cocoa powder on top. So if you are in Australia, the difference between these two beverages, even though they are somewhat similar sizes, is going to be the texture and also the topping. You could easily say that all of the drinks we're talking about here today are just tiny lattes, but if any of these is truly a tiny latte, it's probably this one. Flat whites are tasty. If you see them on a menu, go for it, order it. It's a lovely ratio of espresso to milk. In fact, I'm gonna take a sip of this one. Okay, we're getting towards the end here. Let's move on to the latte. Once more, as with so many of these drinks, we have a double shot of espresso. We also have, surprise, some steamed milk. Now, a latte is truly a combination of espresso and milk that is 8 ounces or above. Generally, at specialty shops, 8 ounces is the smallest size of latte you'll see, but you'll often see them go up to sizes such as 12 or 16, or God forbid, 24 and 32 as well. Within that very wide range of sizes that lattes are made in, you'll start to see some variation in how many shots of espresso are included. Whereas all the drinks we've talked to up to this point tend to just have a traditional double shot of espresso included. Lattes are also where cafes tend to kind of play around the most and start to explore different signature flavors. The addition of syrups into lattes are incredibly popular, and if you clicked on this video, chances are you've had a latte with a fun syrup included, be that vanilla or anything else. However, When we talk about syrups, we do come to the one drink on a cafe menu that has a syrup added that is a latte, but it has its own name. If you can see the tail that has suddenly appeared over here, my cat has a little water station over here. She's drinking some water right now. Staying hydrated, buddy. Good for you. At least one of us is. This brings us to one of our last milk drinks, the mocha. This is in the latte structure, so it comes with steamed milk, comes with espresso, but it has its own syrup, and that syrup is chocolate. It's a very dramatic way to add chocolate to a latte. As we talked about before in our cocoa powder cappuccinos, chocolate and espresso go marvelously together. This is a very, very delicious, iconic drink that you will see on menus, but it's a latte with chocolate. If you order a latte with chocolate, you are ordering a mocha and vice versa. And I am making a mess. Okay. We have one last category of drink to talk about, but thankfully it is quick, it is easy, and it is iced coffee, so I will be right back. Iced coffee, here it is. Yes, it is winter. Probably most of you aren't ordering this, but for those of you who wish to, there are generally two types of iced coffee that you'll find in a cafe. You will find iced coffee, and you'll also find cold brew. And there is a difference between these two, and it often gets kind of convoluted and confused because yes, all cold brew is iced coffee, but not all iced coffee is cold brew. It's kind of a squares and rectangles thing here. Iced coffee on its own is gonna be coffee that has been brewed hot and then chilled afterwards. Cold brew is coffee that was never hot. It was actually brewed, usually at room or a cool temperature for a very long period of time and then strained out. Both of these drinks have different flavor profiles and tactile experiences and preparation methods. However, oftentimes in coffee shops, they'll kind of be lumped into one singular category, and you aren't really sure what you're ordering unless you ask or you taste and find out. Cold brew, out of all the beverages we have talked about today, is the most caffeinated drink. If you are looking for just a shot to the heart, cold brew is the way to go, but additionally, it tends to have a darker, heavier, more chocolate-forward profile, pretty much regardless of the coffee you use. People will frequently describe it as being pretty smooth. It lacks a lot of the acidity that coffee brewed hot has. It's just kind of a different beverage. Whereas coffee that has been brewed hot and then chilled tends to maintain a lot of those qualities that you find in hot coffee. It tends to have a higher perceived acidity. The tactile and mouthfeel experience of it tends to be a little bit lighter than cold brew is, and one isn't necessarily better than the other. It's very much up to your preference. I think those are all the most common foundational coffee drinks you'll find in a cafe. As I disclaim on most of my videos that end up talking about cafe drinks, all of this is coming from a pretty Western and especially American perspective of cafe drinks. We have pulled so many of these off of the traditional Italian espresso menu. We've added some ourselves, of course, like drip coffee and diner coffee is pretty iconically American, but really there are so many other foundational coffee drinks out there across the world. So let this be an opportunity. As usual, if there are ones that I missed today or that you see very commonly wherever you are in cafes, I would love to hear them down in the comments down below. Down in the comments down below. We'll leave it at that. Regardless, I hope this was fun and slightly educational, and I feel like I'm about to be very caffeinated if I go sip on all these drinks next to me like I plan to. So until next time, my name is Morgan. You can find me here on YouTube once a week plus shorts. Additionally, you can find me on TikTok or Instagram almost every single day. I hope you have a great holiday. This might be the last time I see you prior to all the holiday festivities coming to a close. So in the meantime, have a good day. I'll see you all next time.